Martinus Richter. It's my pleasure and honor to welcome you here for our Weight-Bearing CT International Study Group. And I am extremely delighted that we are so many, because when we started this a couple of years ago, we started with 1 or 2 people in addition to the speakers. And this morning I see a lot of people from different countries, different continents, and I'm really thank you for coming this early time in the morning. And talking about research about weight-bearing CT. And so it's a research meeting, and to make it even more realistic, we have almost no breakfast, just coffee, as we know from our earlier, in my case, from our earlier days, when you need nothing to eat, nothing else than coffee and enthusiasm. So when we talk about the weight-bearing CT and research and science, what is the current status here? And it's by far not bad, even though the technology is quite new. A lot of researchers started doing this, and when we look at the scientific program of this conference here, we have 617 abstract submissions, and 80 were elected for oral presentations, and as you can see here, 6 of the 8, which is 8%, already comprise presentations. That means scientific presentations about weight-bearing CT. And when you look at PubMed, it's quite interesting, because you know how long it takes from starting a study until publication. It appears in PubMed. It's not a month, it's not 2 months, it's a year or 2, because you have to do the study normally before you publish. You have to write something, you have to submit, and then it takes time, and even after acceptance it takes even more time. So we have already, you can count a little bit different, but I found currently, yesterday I found 9 papers from 8 different groups. And when you look through these papers, it's very interesting. Everybody is walking roughly in the same direction, but on different paths. So the different study protocols, bipedal stand, unipedal stand, scan of both feet, scan of 1 foot, scan of a half foot, addition of pedography, then different measurement methods in the 3-dimensional environment, in the 2-dimensional environment, the TALAS system, by hand, semi-automatic, somehow automatic, different references, different standard values. So even though we are in the beginning of this scientific research workup, we have, I would not say a mess, but we have so many different ways how to do it. And even though everybody is using the same technology, it's not uniform. And in my opinion, it does not have to be uniform. But at the end, we must find something. Then we come together and discuss things. And then we don't have to agree with each other all the time. But for example, when it comes to standard values, or to how to measure a simple angle like the first, second intermetatarsal angle, we must at least come to a conclusion for the majority of the users. So to do this, or to try to do this, we haven't done it, but we try to do it. I think it's also a good attitude not to complain about things, but if you complain, you also offer something. I don't like it, and I offer this. So what we offer now with our group, what you can see here, it's part of the statutes, that we want to bring back together the researchers. It's mainly about research, but as you know, research is the basis for the clinical use. So it's not against clinical use, but it's not clinical use as such. So we are not discussing how you can reimburse a machine like this, and how you can negotiate with your institution or with health insurances. But I think research is the basis for this, because even not only if you go to university to try to use this new technology, they're asking for research also in other groups, in private settings, because science and research is the basis for justifying what you do. So this is what we want to do, and to do this we have meetings like this, and in this meeting we have just finished the statutes. We will show in different presentations the statutes, how the group works, and how you can become a member, or how you can use the group, and how you can do something for the group, and how the group can do something for you. And for me, it's very, very, very important to say that this is independent from the industry. It's in cooperation with the industry, but it's not a device that we are looking at, it's the technology we are looking at. So it's not this device or this device, so it's independent, but in cooperation, of course, with the industry, because without the devices we cannot do research, and the other way around, without the research, the devices are not justified. So it's very important for me to mention that it's independent. So we have in the first real talk, we will show the statutes and then some of our projects, what we plan for the future. And I propose that we do the discussion at the end. And then we will have enough time for discussion. And two of us have to go to they have a moderation, but others like myself, I don't have a moderation and the talk immediately, so we will have even a little bit more time. If you have burning questions after the end, we can still discuss it after the end. But on the other hand, the meeting must stop at 8 because the scientific program starts at 8. And as you know, the program chair of the Congress is really a very strict person, so we cannot run over. So I thank you very much for my talk, and now we immediately proceed without discussion before to the next talk. It's Arne Bursens about the WBCT ISG, that's the abbreviation of the group, Weight-Bearing CT International Study Group. Structures, statutes, and membership possibilities. And please.
Welcome to this Weight-Bearing CT Research Symposium. So this presentation will show more the constitution. It will be much more formal. I'm Arne Bursens. I'm one of the 2 secretaries appointed to the research study group, and we will give an overview here of the statute, the differences in our constitution, the structure, and I think most importantly for everybody present, I think is the membership and how to be part of the study group. So our first chapter is the general principles, where we have the definition of our study group. And important to state here is to show that it's international, so for everybody. It's independent and it's a not-for-profit group. And our objectives are stated here. It's mainly a communication platform for foot and ankle surgeons, and to inform also in different educational events, also to promote and improve the research regarding the weight-bearing CT. And as Professor Richter was already mentioning, it's important, I think, if we do other studies, to have a standardized methodology, as shown here. And also, if we have a lot of different studies and measurements, we can offer guidelines also for other disciplines to use and interpret the weight-bearing CT. So, the main part is also shown here of our composition in Article 3, where we have the executives, and it's the main board that is driving all the main decisions, but it's supported by representatives, as you see here. The representatives are from the different societies around the world concerning foot and ankle, the NAFAS, the EFAS, the AFAS, and also in Latin America, the Flame Kip. So as a main part, these 2 administrative entities are mentioned, the executives, the responsibility for most of the tasks and decisions, but they will have a clear support by the executives to show them the different input from the other researchers. The statutes are shown here in the executives, with the president being Professor Richter, the vice president being Professor Barg, the treasurer being Dr. Francois Lins, the secretary being Dr. De Neto, and the secretary number 2 being myself. The representatives from the different societies are, for the NAFAS, Dr. Chris Kutze, for the EFAS, Professor Martinez Richter, for the Flame Kip, Dr. De Neto, for the AFAS, Dr. Tanaka from Japan, and for the radiology, it is Dr. Chateau de Mary from Baltimore. So how does our election process go? It's mainly every 2 years that we have the meeting for the boards. The current vice president now is already elected to becoming the new president. The applicants for the positions that want to join the board should be giving their files in the declaration of the candidates' projects and intentions, and all applicants will not be involved in the validation and voting process. That's an important part, so that we can have an objective voting. And this mentions here where we have a tie, what we do, and also when the executives agree on the decision, this will be also clearly given to the members. So these members, and I think this is the most important part and the most interesting part for being a member, there are two categories that you can join for. One are the active members, and these are involved in the research projects and the proposed guidelines. And then we have the passive members, that's everybody wants to be involved in knowing what the weight-bearing CT studies are mentioning. And also it's suitable for foot and ankle surgeons and radiologists. So how can you become the admission, or how can you become an active member? For being an active member as being involved in the studies, you have to have one recommendation of one of the members of the board in the moment. And for the passive members, it's enough to show here the email address of the weight-bearing CT study group. And when you contact this address, you will immediately become a member and be known for the newsletter for every event that we organize regarding the weight-bearing CT. There's a small note here if you want to be an active member and afterwards you want to quit. A small note is enough to the president to state that you're not interested anymore in participating in the different studies. For the passive members, it can be chosen. You just send it by email and then you won't have the updates anymore. So if there would be a problem with one of the members, it could be that internally or externally the member could not be part of the group anymore, as stated here. And if you want to change to the internal regulations, we also are going to meet for this, and this will also be communicated to all of the different members. I thank you for your attention.
There's one word about the membership. It says foot and ankle surgeons. And it does not say foot and ankle orthopedic surgeons. So our interpretation for a foot and ankle surgeon is somebody who does surgery at foot and ankle. And to answer the question that might come from the US, for example, or from the UK, yes, it's also podiatrists. So we will not exclude podiatrists. So it's for everybody who does surgery there. So we don't want to get in the struggle between podiatry, foot and ankle surgeons, and orthopedic foot and ankle surgeons. For us, the research is in the focus, and everyone who can apply something from a surgeon side. But and on the other hand, it's clearly in the hand of the foot and ankle surgeons, and should not be in the hand of the radiologists. So therefore, the radiologists are not on the board, not on the executives. But of course, we need representatives, because in most of the institutions, the radiologists will be responsible for the imaging, and without radiologists, we cannot do it. So just to explain the terminology a little bit, you can think about it until the discussion, if you can live with it. So Cesar, please.
Good morning. Thank you very much for being here, and thanks for the invitation. So I'll speak a little bit about this. For sure, is one of my passions, and I'll try to bring you into this. And so Dr. Richter asked me to talk specifically about the new technology possibilities and how we can do a lot of research regarding this new technology. And I'll try to so we have a long road to run, and for I don't know who here has access to the images. I know some of the people here already have the machines, and it's a completely different thing. So if I'm doing a lot of research with flat foot, and if you just look to the X-rays, you see one thing. When you go to the weight-bearing CT, it's different. You can see all the involved deformities, all the relationship between the bones, and sometimes you look to the X-ray. X-ray doesn't give you the information you need, so you can extract much more interesting things for your patient and for the research. And so it's the same pathology, it's the same patient, it's the same thing. Posterior tibial tendon dysfunction. We use like talus first metatarsal angle. It's broken. You can see in the sagittal view of the X-ray or the lateral view of the X-ray. But when you look at three-dimensionally, you can see there's a lot going on that you can't see in the X-ray. And so, just to do a parallel, for me, because here in Europe, people really like soccer, like Brazilians. And so if you used to have a video game, and so it's like comparing, for me, it's comparing like the Mega Drive and the PlayStation PS4. It's the same, you're playing the same game with a different machine, but you're not seeing the same thing. So for you that, I don't know if someone plays here, I still play. And the first FIFA soccer, 1994, and now the new FIFA 2018, it's the same game. Soccer didn't change. Unfortunately, the rules never change. And but if you look, it's completely different. So you're playing the same game, but this was the old one. We don't have, so this is FIFA soccer. You see, it was really fun, and you could understand. And this is the new thing, and so you can still play the FIFA 94 if you want. You have something better now, and I think for you to evaluate your patients, it's kind of the same. Keeping using the X-ray, we're doing things wrong. We're not doing the best for our patients. And so, I don't know what just happened. When you're doing, you can do in the X-ray. We used to do a lot of measurements. Just some examples here. So you can do talus first metatarsal angle. You can do calcaneal inclination angle or the pitch of the calcaneus. You can also do two-dimensionally in the CT scan, like here, bunch of different measurements, 4-foot arch angle, navicular to floor, medial cuneiform floor. These are all for flat foot. And more importantly, when you're going to the two-dimensional thing, using the three-dimensional data set to go to the two-dimensional, there's a lot going on. You have to, even though it's really interesting, you have to find the proper cut. You have to find you can change the axis to get a better view of what you're trying to measure, what you're trying to understand. But this is really fun, but it takes a lot of time. So when I started my research in Baltimore, I was a research fellow, so I had a lot of time. Now, probably being a clinical fellow, I wouldn't be able to spend that time anymore because of the clinical duties that I have to fulfill. So it takes time. You can do it's fun, and you're bringing, most of the time you're bringing things that you've learned in the X-ray, and you're trying to bring to this three-dimensional thing. And I'm not sure if this is right. Maybe I believe that in the future we're coming with new measurements. Like for flat foot, maybe we're going to find new relationships that are more important than the ones we're measuring right now. And this, in a clinical setting, it's impossible. We cannot expect that Dr. Richter is going to stop his clinic and do 30 measurements to tell the patient. He won't have time, and time, for sure, time is money, and the patients are waiting. They don't like you to be late. And the other problem is we need to standardize things. If you're doing the two-dimensional, doesn't matter if you're doing the X-ray or if you're doing in the two-dimensional image of the CT scan, we need to standardize because if you look into the literature, I already talked about this before in the past here, but you can find, I did a extensive literature research for my papers, and you can find description. People just say, I measured talus first metatarsal angle, calcaneal inclination angle, and most of the times, with some exceptions, they don't really explain how they got to the, and if you're using X-ray, then it's okay, talus first metatarsal angle, even though you can put your line in the talus in different positions, you can imagine. But for the CT scan, if you're using the two-dimensional images, you have to tell how you got to the image. Because if I give you to do the same measurement, you probably won't get to the same image that I did my measurement. So you have to explain exactly how you got there. And I recently published it in JBJS, my paper, and I think it's one of the few that really describe how to get to the measurements, how to get to the images. And the future for sure is automatic or semi-automatic measurements, and we need the machines should do it better than us. They should be more reliable. They should get to the best measurements with more accuracy and precision. And then these are just, I won't play all of them, but these are just videos of what we are expecting. So this is just a video representation. So if you want to do, so for hind-foot alignment angle, for example, we have Arn here that published a lot on this, but you can do, depending on where you put your landmarks, which anatomical landmarks you use, you're going to get a different measurement. So this is what we expect in the future. This is just a video representation. It's not the real software working. But we're expecting, so you just input the data from your patient, and the computer, the software is going to give you all the measurements you want. And this could be for multiple measurements. So talar declination angle, you can choose the floor as a reference, or you can use the line connecting the most inferior aspect of the tuberosity to the fifth metatarsal. The multiple linear measurements, like for medial column height. It should be really easy for the computer to give you all of this information. And this, I'm working in one of my projects for the year at HSS is comparing manual and automatic measurements for, I'm sorry, I have the video, I can show you, I don't know why it's not playing here. But I'll show you, that's the most important video, and we're gonna have to make it happen. But for sure, we're gonna have to relearn. We're gonna have to learn, we've learned, but we're gonna have to unlearn and relearn. We have to keep the mind open, because we're gonna, these images are going to give us new ideas for the pathologies that we are treating, and I'm pretty sure we're gonna change the way we're doing things. And like I said, things that you did in the x-ray, so if you played FIFA 94, every time you went to do a cross like this, if you had your players here and you were going to cross the ball, you would score for sure, 100% sure. It's part of a bug of the game. And now, in the FIFA 2018, it's not that easy. You're not scoring. If you cross, you probably won't score. It's difficult to score. And so what I mean for that is some things that we applied for x-rays, and we, like talus first metatarsal angle, is like talk about flat foot, it's talus first metatarsal angle. Maybe that won't be the thing anymore in the weight-bearing CT. We're gonna learn new things. And this is for sure regarding research. This is the land of opportunity. Weight-bearing CT is gonna change pretty much, in my opinion, at least 50% of what we're doing in foot and ankle surgery these days. And we have to start with the simple, showing that, like I showed in my paper, it was a simple paper. I was just trying to show that if you put weight, the angles change. And we know that for x-ray, but you can't, it's not because you know for x-ray that it's the same in the new technology. You have to prove everything again. You have to start from the scratch. And that's why it's for sure a land of opportunities, and we welcome you to join us and to be part of it. Thank you very much, and thanks for the companies for the support.
Hi everybody, thank you for being here. I'd like to thank the people who will recognize themselves for the opportunity of being here. And yeah, I wanted talk to you about this human foot project, which is a worldwide database project, and we think it's very important. Now, there are two ways to do research, and the historical scientific method is the deductive method, in which we have experience, and so we make hypotheses, and then we build up experimentations to check our hypotheses in the real world. But doing this, we sometimes come across bias because we are trying to kind of force the data into our hypotheses. And the we cannot ignore big data and artificial intelligence and data mining, which are absolutely revolutionizing our world today in every single realm of research and industry and whatever. And this is called inductive reasoning. And so we have the data, and we use AI because it's a lot of data, so our human brains are probably not enough to process all this data. So we're using this to find patterns that can tell us new knowledge that we didn't know before. And I'm sure you know this guy. He's Elon Musk, and you may hate him or love him. I think he's a genius. And he is using this. He's putting cars out there, and the cars are harvesting the data, which is giving him some new knowledge that he can then pour back into the cars to make them better. And that's all around the world. And this is called deep learning. So there are some examples elsewhere in the health domain. And ENCODE is the Encyclopedia of DNA Elements. So that's more than 400 researchers all around the world putting their research together to get enough data to see new patterns and learn new things. And so what they're trying to do is to get a clearer picture of what part of the human DNA is actually functional. So that's a very exciting project, and it's ongoing. And it's the same kind of thing that we want to build for the foot and ankle. This is what it looks like. So it's putting together lots of little bricks from all the researchers around the world. And we're hoping that with the upcoming of the weight-bearing CT technology and automatic measurements, it's going to make it possible to do this in our domain. So of course there are challenges. One of them is harvesting the data. So as Cesar pointed out, if you're going to spend, I don't know how long it was, Cesar, but let's say 10 minutes per data set, you're never going to get around to doing it unless you have clinical fellows doing this for you all day. So the manual harvesting of data, of anatomical data, is cumbersome, and we need the automatic measurements to help us with this. There is still another challenge that we have to merge the anatomical data with the clinical data so that we can correlate what deformity, what changes in the anatomy correlate to what pathology. And we still have to figure out how to merge the anatomical and the clinical data together. We are going to work also on ethics, legal aspects, patient approval, data security, and of course this costs money, but our partnership with the industry, and it's another occasion to thank them to support the group, will help us with that. Also, analyzing the data is really a challenge. I mean, there are scientists, data scientists, that specialize in this, but they're not surgeons. And surgeons probably cannot process all this data on their own. So we have to figure out new ways of understanding this data. So the new possibilities that we have, of course, we mentioned automatic measurements to grasp the anatomy. So that's one part of the problem. We mentioned the need for clinical input as well. But also, this whole project will be based on your contribution. We hope that, like Elon Musk's cars, all our weight-bearing CT units will feed this database to increase the global knowledge. One of the examples that we did, I will present this later, is work on lateral ankle instability. And we used a data mining process to find a mathematical relationship between hindfoot varus and the risk of chronic lateral ankle instability across the whole spectrum of measurements, so from very severe varus deformities to very severe valgus, and with very strong statistical power. So that's very interesting. So our plan of action for now is to set up the database, to actually do the software. Of course, this requires funding. And there's also the question of ownership. We think this should remain within the weight-bearing CT International Study Group because it's independent. Of course, it should be accessible to any researcher in the world who is a member and who has ideas, who sees patterns and wants to move things forward. So thank you for your kind attendance, and I thank again the industry and our partners for participating in this.
So thank you very much. Now we start with the discussion. I will hand over to the Vice President, Dr. Bark. He will lead for the discussion. And I also stand for the simple questions, the complex questions, please, to Dr. Bark.
Good morning, everybody. Also from my side, thank you very much for attending here. And is there any questions me, Professor Richter, or anybody else from our group can answer for you? So please go ahead.
I have a question.
Please.
Who of you has a device, not the technology, whatever kind? Okay. And who of those have started with research? And who of those discussed it with somebody else, how to do it? Two, okay. And who of the others are planning to have a device? And have it not? Okay, good. So it's exactly what we have. We have different groups. Some have, some don't. Some have done research, some have done not. Some are just interested and don't have it and are not planning it. So I think it's exactly what we want, bring people together.
It's a very important point, and as Professor Richter also mentioned, I will have to leave in about 7:50 because I'm a moderator of the first session, which goes from 8 till 10 today. So you're very welcome to attend this section because the second part of the section, that will be 5 papers with weight-bearing CT scan, and I'm really delightful to see more and more papers. However, I think that's very important. So the problem I have, for example, in my clinic, I think I know how to analyze those pictures, but I always have some discussions with the radiologist. And I think right now, which we are one of the parts we are working within our group, is to standardize the most important measurements regarding forefoot, midfoot, but also hindfoot. So hopefully everybody is awake, and now maybe some other questions. Please, sir. So I think Dr. Bursens mentioned it, so you just need one letter of recommendation from the active board, and I would say maybe you can send an email and your intention to Professor Richter, to me, or to any other members, and maybe send a CV along with your email. And I would say an important requirement to be an active member is also you should prove that you're really interested in doing research. If you just want to get to know the knowledge, then I think it would be better to start first with to be a passive member and then see how the group is doing, see whether this is something you want to do for the future, and then you can, of course, switch to become an active member. Is it right, Martinus?
So it's an open platform for everybody to become a member. The only thing is, for this group, to become an active member and also passive member, you must be a foot and ankle surgeon or radiologist. I see people from the industry, for example, Tom Loring from Stryker. They're also invited to as cooperative partners, but they cannot. So the industry cannot be member because I must say again, this must be independent from the industry. That does not mean that we do not cooperate with the industry. And of course, there's a support. The industry will support us, and we will support the industry. But it's not about membership. So to become a member, you must be a foot and ankle surgeon or a radiologist. No other way. We have said clearly pediatrists or podiatrists or whatever kind of. This is for us, for surgeons and for radiologists.
Yes, please.
So we're just about to get our scanner, and I'm interested in, I think it's fantastic how you're going to bring the data in, but how exactly are you going to collect the data from different sources? What measurements are you looking for? It ideally would be automatic, you know, whenever a patient has a scan, that we have the demographics going in and you know, potentially even some outcome score to go with it too. And then that data gets automatically collated so that we can bring the answers out. From the database we have, collating the data is really difficult. That's the hard part, to make sure that it's coming in, that it's reliable data, and that it's correctly paired with the demographics. So I'm curious, you know, we've got a vision, how we're going to get there.
That's a very good point. And actually, yesterday we had a meeting within the group, and we discussed many points. We are a young research group, and we are at the beginning of our work. And first of all, so the first plan is actually to validate the three-dimensional measurements. Is it something which, what we measure, is it a correct measurements? This is the first point. The second point is there is already many attempts how to do the automatic measurements. And then later we will offer to the companies those principles of the automatic measurements, and they will decide whether they want to build in their device or not. And I think they will. The problem is with the data project, and I know there is a big difference. There's differences between the United States, differences between Europe and between Canada regarding the managing and handling of the data. With the data security, we need a secure place to store the data. We need IRB approval for that stuff, but we will work on it. But this is, I don't think it will happen very soon, but if we start working, we will be done with this. Does it answer your question?
Yeah, do you have the IRB and submission package so that we can get going on that?
So in my hospital, for example, I'm not speaking from all hospitals, I'm speaking from University of Utah, and I would say University of Utah has the most critical IRBs from among the members of the study group. If it's a standard of care, we have an umbrella project, so we can always use those data. When I start a prospective study, I will have to initiate the IRB. However, since 3 years, I'm now a member of one IRB panel at the University of Utah, so I know all the pits and all the problems, how to apply for this, and I don't think it would be a big problem. A little bit problematic it would be if you start a multi-center study, because multi-center studies always have to be coordinated between the single centers. And in some centers, the IRB requirements are not as strong as in another ones. And I'm afraid the University of Utah will have always the strongest IRB requirements, but we will get it because the radiation is very low. And I actually started already one prospective study with weight-bearing CT scan, a clinical studies, and it wasn't a problem at all. Please.
I would just like to add on to that. Oh, thank you. Yes, your point is that collecting the data is the problem, and that's basically the point today. It is very possible, and I think it's absolutely indispensable that in the future the automatic measurement systems will be implemented at some point, but they will also be retroactive. So it will be possible to program them to work through existing databases that you would have built before. So don't wait to start your database and to input some data, because at some point the automatic tools will be there to work through these databases and add retrospectively. I'm not sure this responds entirely to your question, but I was thinking that maybe you were anxious to start this, and my answer is yes, start. You know, however you do it, store the data, and the tools will be there to build on that.
But more importantly, you know, the question of consent is something that we need to do prospectively, because you can get data and as soon as you centralize that data, you need consent to
raising this. The legal aspects is the key aspect, but it's also a huge piece of work. But they've done it for EN Code and other projects, so I don't see why we couldn't achieve that. Of course, that's where we need time and support, but we'll get that. But it is paramount, and we should add also that not all this retrospective data will be eligible to analysis. And the other important point is effective that the sooner we do this, the better. But it is a huge piece of work, and the validation of the measurements comes before, because even if you have consent and approval, what do you harvest in terms of data if everybody does his own measurements? So first comes the validation of the measurements, and at the same time we have to start on the IRB, because it will take a lot of time and efforts and funding. Thank you.
I would like now to give a microphone to Professor Richter again. I have to moderate the early session. Feel free to join us. It's between 8 and 10 hours in the second auditorium. Thank you guys very much. Thank you very much, Martinus.
Thank you, Alexei. And I want you that you really discuss very strictly these new papers about weight-bearing CT in your session. So now Soren has another question, but Cesar wants to show us the video that was not running before, and then we can proceed.
So this year I've been working with CurveBean because at HSS they have two PADCATs, and so we're working for the flat-foot automatic measurements, and here's just an initial version. It's not the final version yet. We're still struggling to fine-tune it, but this is kind of what it will look like once it's ready. So first, they're clustering the bones. That's for the software. It's probably the most important part. So they have to cluster the bone you're asking them to cluster, and then after that, once they found it in the three-dimensional data set, then the angles, the relationship between the bones shouldn't be difficult. So here we're just showing the clustering of each one of the bones. You just click and it gives you the bone you want. So we're clicking for hindfoot, now the cuneiforms, metatarsals. Then you can isolate the bone you want to study. If you want to study just one or two bones, the relationship of them, like for example, talus first metatarsal relationship. And then you just click auto measurements, and this is what I think Dr. Younger just left us, but I think that's what Dr. Younger wanted to know. Like, we need to define which relationships are important, which angles are important, and we are still discussing that. I'm not sure. Some of the angles that I did, I don't think they're really important. But here you can see, I will just pause it before it. So it gives us the location, so the three. The location of each one of the heads of the metatarsals. It gives the location of the calcaneus, the talus, and it gives you the distance. So for example, if you want to do medial cuneiform floor, it's giving you here 12.6 millimeters. Navicular floor, 4.8 millimeters. So we're gonna decide which are the measurements we want, and we're going to input into the software. And once you click, there's no more struggling. Of course it's same. It's not completely automated, but it took me, Francois asked it, for each patient in my paper, it took 20. The mean time was 22 minutes to do all the measurements for every single patient. And so here we will probably be able to do that in 1 minute, I would say. And you're going to get a lot of data depending on what you're going to extract from it. So this is just an initial version, but that's where we're heading to.
Okay, thank you. So now we can proceed with the discussion. Soren, you had a question?
Yeah, I had a question and maybe a suggestion. And was wondering if you would consider having a associate membership for people that are not necessarily surgeons, like myself, for instance, that are an engineer, or maybe other people that are anatomists, biologists perhaps, that are doing active research in foot and ankle and may be interested in using it.
Yes, we have discussed this already, and there's no rule without exception. That's for sure. And so the board can, of course, overrule the rules. For example, to say we want this as a member, or we can also have honorary members or whatever members. So this is, of course, could be like that, membership or cooperation, could be also cooperation. And we will then discuss case by case about this. But to start with, again, I must say, because I've learned from earlier projects that sometimes you start something and then it's taken over by people that are not in the OR all day, and then you go in the OR morning at 8, and then you leave the OR in the afternoon, and something has decided without you, against you. So that's the reason why we've been so strict to have it in the hand of foot and ankle surgeons. And the same would be for the board. So there will not be a urologist in the board. There will also not be a non-foot and ankle surgeon in the board, as far as we plan right now. But it's an open platform, and we want to bring people together. And still we are quite strict about this, because we have learned from other situations that it was taken over then by somebody else. So any other questions? So we will have future meetings, of course. So we will work on the projects. We don't know yet when the future meeting will be. Probably at the AAOS meeting. We will also have we just got accepted to have it's like a scientific exhibition with most of our work we have done. We will have a very big scientific forum at AAOS, and I think we will do the next meeting there. And it's an ongoing work. So right now we work on automatic measurements. Regarding the database, I just wanted to add, when Dr. Younger mentioned this, so we have in our hands, we have already 10,000 data sets. So alone in my institution, we have 8,000 data sets, and we can start to work on them because they're already there locally. And of course, to set up a database, it's like an international registry, or what you mentioned with the DNA registry. It's very difficult, also because of data protection, and especially when patient data. So we must also correlate the data, for example, to not the name of the patient, but the weight of the patient and the disease of the patient. It must be disease specific also, and I'm quite sure that not each single institution and country can contribute, because some countries have very high level of data protection and others have not. But at the end, we want to have that everybody who is interested can profit from the database, and not only the ones that contribute. So it's not only for contributors, it's also for people that are not allowed or not able to contribute. They will still profit from that at the end. That's at least the plan. So now we are here. Now you have the chance to not only to ask a question, but to not only to offer your cooperation, but also to formulate your demands. So what do you want from us? Tom, what does Stryker want from us? So you can offer us something, of course, but why are you here? What do you want?
So
do you want?
From a corporate standpoint, it's interesting looking at databases like this as we go to develop new implants and want access to a broad range of patients, maybe even down to specific pathologies. It really helps us. We've done this somewhat. Stryker has a database for hip and knee on their own already, and they've utilized that to change the shape of femoral stems for hip replacements. So it
So it's good that you raise it, because one of our plans, it's not a plan because we are not the owner of the companies, but one of our recommendations would be to the companies to create also a software for planning. For example, for total hips, total knees. Right now it's only foot, total ankle prosthesis. The other devices that go up, let's say for total ankle prosthesis. And then one of our recommendations could be what the software has to do, and that it could be used not, again, device specific, but technology specific. So, and then other companies that don't have the device yet, like Stryker, could come in and could say, okay, we have implants and we propose to have this and this and this. And that would also be something we could consider. But again, we will not just recommend what to do, we will not do ourselves, and we will not develop a software or something, because it's not our task. Okay, any other questions? Good, yeah, Francois is also to leave. So now you can choose between 2 rooms. In one room we have 5 presentations. I recommend to do this. In the other room I have just 1 presentation about this. So you're welcome to listen now. And also there are some workshops from the companies about how the specific technology works and how to purchase. So there are also around noon there are workshops, industrial workshops from the companies that provide the devices. So thank you for coming. It was a great pleasure for me to have so many people here in the morning. I was extremely tired in the morning, but now I feel really refreshed because so much interest from you, and I thank you so much for coming, and I wish you a nice remaining conference. Thank you.